And I just remember humor, a lot of humor with Richard, and in the exploration of Juliet, and having just a really wonderful time about, I mean, I think me being the young girl and him being a man, he obviously respected what I would bring to the quality of what it would mean to be a young woman in love. But with him there was a tremendous amount of passion. I mean, I remember that I would have a lot of fun because when he would talk and he would be the nurse, I always thought he was like the nurse to me, Richard. That was my memory of him. He really was my nurse in that experience.
You've been very good in the part.
You know what, actually, if men were still playing that part, he would be brilliant in that part, I've always thought. That's what I remembered saying to him at the time. You'd make a great nurse.
How did you get along or mix with Anthony, your Romeo?
I had a lot of fun with Anthony. And he was very kind to me and very sweet to me as well. And he was, you know, I think it's much harder playing Romeo in many ways than it is playing Juliet. I think it's very daunting playing Romeo because you're also sort of, you have all the fireworks of the Mercutio and the Tybalt that are much more flashy in a way and have than Romeo. It's a very difficult part, I think, to play, and then really Juliet kind of soars through the second act. She drives his scenes are always the one after. He's always receiving the news after Juliet.
Yeah. He's running to catch up with her.
And so it's, I just remember that he had the most beautiful blue eyes, Anthony, and then that black curly hair. And when we would be in our costumes and those sort of rich velvets that Deborah Hansen had created, and I just remember, and those lovely tights, and I remembered he had a lovely pair of buns and those tight tights. It was perfect. I remember it.
What do you do when you're a normal guy and girl and you're doing probably the most famous love scene in history on the balcony? How do you approach that and think, how am I going to make this work?
Oh, God. I think you just, the language is so beautiful. It's so beyond what most of us are ever lucky enough to ever utter out of our own mouth from our own instigation. So to have this extraordinary map, basically, through which these two young lovers dance, I mean, for me, talk about feeling like trying to catch up to something. I mean, when you know you are, that you have to strive for something because it is so, the quality of it is so superior. Well, not so much, you know, I'm not saying it's superior to me in terms of putting myself down, but I mean, literally, the level of the artistry of that language is so enormous that one can never be complacent. You're always trying to reach for it, and I think that in itself is sort of a wonderful analogy for the love that they're feeling, that it's just so much, it's so much greater than both of them in a sense. There's this sort of this pureness to it, this, I mean, if I knew then what I know now, I would love to go back and do Juliet again today, because I think just that extraordinary thing of having language where you can't sort of, you know, well, what am I feeling? Oh, now I'm going to say it. And I remember one of the sort of greatest gifts that doing Shakespeare taught me, and then subsequently later working with someone like Michael Langham also taught me, was that those words there's no subtext in Shakespeare, really. It's all, your thoughts are happening. You're saying your thoughts as you're feeling them. So that's the sheer sort of joy of speaking that language, is that for every thought that you have, he's actually given you the words to express it. And then you can't sort of think, oh God, here come, you know, these lines that are so famous, you know, parting is such sweet sorrow. You know, these lines kind of come up. And yet, when you kind of throw all of that away and you get to the essence of what it must really what they're really feeling, because that's the other genius of those words, is that all of that technicality aside, what he's really given you is an extraordinary key to emotion. And he's given words to feeling. So if you know what you're feeling too, then the words, it's just that sort of brilliant marriage. And that very rarely happens in work, period.
It's my soul that calls upon my name.
Romeo,
My soul.
what o'clock tomorrow shall I send to thee?
By the hour of 9.
I will not fail. 'Tis 20 year till then. No. I did forget why I did call thee back.
Let me stand here till thou remember it.
I shall forget to have thee still stand there, remembering how I love thy company.
And I'll still stay, to have thee still forget, forgetting any other home but this.
'Tis almost morning. I would have thee gone, and yet no farther than a wanton's bird that lets it hop a little from her hand, like a poor prisoner in his twisted gyves, and with a silken thread plucks him back again, so loving, jealous of his liberty.
I would I were thy bird.
Sweet, so would I. Yet I should kill thee with much cherishing. Good night. Good night. Parting is such sweet sorrow that I shall say good night till it be morrow.
Sleep dwell upon thine eyes, peace in thy breast. Would I were sleep and peace, so sweet to rest. Hence will I to my ghostly father's cell, his help to crave, and my dear hap to tell.
I remember that at every point in every show, it wouldn't matter what time, I would say one line and I would get a twitch in my hand. One finger would twitch involuntarily. Every single performance with every single line on that balcony scene at a certain point. And I just, I don't know why that was that. But I just think it's, it was just it was a lot of mental gymnastics as well. It was like doing a marathon. It was like running a marathon every time you did that show.